Hello. I will be recording my Magnum Opus. Woohoo, that's fun. Okay. Fan fiction is a way of the culture repairing the Fanfiction is a way of the culture repairing the damage done in a system where contemporary myths are owned by corporations instead of by the folk. Henry Jenkins. My short story is a fanfiction based on the 2008 BBC show Merlin. I really enjoyed the characters, their development throughout the show, and their relationships. My main motivation for writing my own version of events is because I really dislike the ending to the show and the lack of queer representation throughout. Being queer myself, I prefer to write stories with queer characters. It's a way of putting a piece of myself in my writing, while also considering that if another queer person reads this, they'll feel seen. I also think that there's enough cishet fiction out there already. On the topic of being gay, I have felt a strong sense of yearning over people in my life before, and I think it's a very distinct, special feeling that's difficult to duplicate. For those reasons, I decided to write a story about it. In a way, I miss the days of longing. Through writing this, I could revisit them from a safe distance. Something else I like to admire from a safe distance is history, and this story is based on Arthurian legend. I think that as I get older and continue to learn, my historical fiction stories will have a stronger focus on actually being accurate for their time. Right now, however, I don't feel the need for it, as I'm mostly writing fantasy, but I know that as soon as I learn more detailed history, it will show in my writing. Like most history, my story has a tragic ending. For many years, I was nihilistic and negative, but now that I've gone through that and come out the other side, I find it easier to be optimistic. Because of this, I thought it might be fun to write a really sad story. Since I do have a habit of looking for the silver lining in everything, I made sure to add a little one right at the end. I don't want the reader to feel sad for too long. As much as I love history, I also love theater and acting. One of my favorite ways to convey emotion is through dialogue, and that happens to be my favorite part of acting. For me, acting is all about portraying the intricacies of life through different perspectives. Seeing through the walls we put up to other people and sticking your hands in the dirty universal truths of life. I focus on all kinds of relationships in my stories, exploring the inner workings of human interactions. They don't know how many times I've saved their lives, Gaius. His eyes were starting to sting. Do you know how many times I've saved yours? Merlin's face dropped. Don't be rash, Merlin. Life is about secrets and loss. If you don't get used to it now, you won't live long enough to try again. And if I prove you wrong, you won't. I will! You don't need to, Merlin. We have each other. The few words left unsaid bitterly lingered between them. Is that not enough? I'm heavy on dialogue for this very reason, also inspired by the work of Benjamin Elier-Sands. As a result, sometimes when I write descriptions, I think, why describe it when they can say it? This can get frustrating because I then have to figure out how they say it, especially without actually saying it, but I do enjoy the challenge. How much can I make them say without it being said? How did he forget their anniversary? He was ready to fall face first onto his pillow and wallow in self-pity for the night. Didn't go as planned? Arthur jumped and hit his head on his chamber's doorframe. Merlin! As expected. How did you? Hard not to, Merlin said, looking him up and down. Shut up. Merlin smiled. He looked at the way Merlin's hair shone in the moonlight. A stray piece was sticking out, and he wanted to smooth it down. He did. Merlin looked at him. Good night. Good night. Arthur closed his door. He wished he hadn't. This story is similar to my writing in the author's voice assignment we did earlier this year. That story was also heavy with the dialogue, though between then and writing this, my magnum opus, I have improved with adding appropriate descriptions to make the pacing softer, as well as improving the authenticity of my dialogue. This next quote is from my author's voice story. I chose it because it shows how much my writing improved because of writing the poetry anthology. This is a scene where the main character digs a grave for his husband nights before he dies. I'd put Wallace to bed. I turned his nightlight on so he wouldn't be scared, as Theo always does for him. I went downstairs to the living room. I picked up a pillow and threw it at the window. It didn't smash. I hurled the remote through the glass and the fire in me grew. I took a kitchen knife and ran it through the couch cushions. I opened the cupboards and placed every plate, one by one, carefully on the floor. I moved down the line, crushing each under my bare feet. I enjoyed watching the blood pour across the white-tiled floor. I was burning. I didn't need plates. Hate and envy are too ugly to eat. I stole all of our fruit and lined them up on the coffee table. I put my back to the garden door and aimed. The juices dripped onto the floor, making my feet melt in pain. I think, as if I could feel. I smashed through the back door and into the night. The rain was pitying me, trying to dampen my flame, put me to rest. I wasn't done yet. My fingers pierced the soil and mauled and lacerated the earth until I smelt blood. I looked up. The stars were out behind the clouds. I looked down. What had I done? I crawled into the pit on my hands and knees and howled. Rain mixed with blood, sweat, and tears. Love mixed with spite and grief. What did I become? Although a lot of my stories end in tragedy and death, I hope I keep the same positive worldview in my future years. I know I'll keep spinning around the wheel of fortune as I go. I look forward to reflecting on where I was in my life and how my beliefs change over time through my stories. I'm sure I'll feel the devastating longing in the pit of my stomach at another time in my life, likely very soon because I'm setting off to a different university as my partner this year. I'll still be queer when I'm old, so I'm pretty confident that subject matter in particular won't change in my writing. Apart from that, I'm very curious how the themes of my stories will change as I gain new experiences from the ups and downs of my life. The art I love gives the mundane parts of life a breath of fresh air. It gives the sad, angry, grieving parts of life a new light. In my Magnum Opus, I show steps of life that everyone has to go through, whether they be mundane, maddening, or miserable. I make them relatable, even if you've never been through them yourself. You'll come away from the story with a different approach to life. I hope. Gaius fiddled with his spoon for a while. I can't lose you. Merlin's breath hitched. You won't. He couldn't if he tried. Gaius smiled at him gently, his cheeks creasing around his eyes. Also, the soup was terrible. Merlin, he said, sitting back. They both laughed until their stomachs hurt. From the hysterics or the soup, Merlin couldn't tell.